going, Blamers? And welcome back to Blame It on Mel. Today we have a very special guest. She's an influencer, Annie Marie. And I found you on TikTok and I think Instagram both. And I instantly was like, this girl, I have to talk to her because I am so intrigued by how you even come up with your content, first of all. And also just, I love that you do it through humor. Like you get all of your messages across through laughter. And I feel like, especially with a lot of this, like kind of anti-Mormon stuff, we just need to have more laughter about it because it is something that is, yes, there's a lot of trauma there, but can we also make fun of it?
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. And I think, I grew up doing skits and doing sort of church theater even. And I just always kind of found like church culture very comical. It would make me laugh. And so I think it's kind of just natural when I think about my Mormon experience that it's funny and it's fun to make fun of. So I love expressing in that way too. I think you're right. It does resonate with a lot of people because it can be heavy. But if we can laugh about it, I feel like laughter is one of the best medicines, right? So
I totally agree, but it's also so entertaining. Like I remember seeing your first reel come, it just, it came across my like For You page. And I was like, this is funny shit, like so freaking funny. And then I was like, I had to watch more and learn more. And I was like, oh my gosh, save. Like I saved all of your reels. I was like, these are so good. But yeah, I mean, so when you were an active member, you also thought it was funny then?
oh yeah. Like my sisters and I, we would watch, the women and men bearing their testimonies like on Fast Testimony Sundays. And it was just, I think as a kid, before a lot of the programming kind of sets in, you can just sense there's a performance of it. And so we would like look at each other, my siblings and I, and just like laugh. We're like, this is crazy what these women are saying and what people are saying. Like, how are they getting that from this and correlating these experiences to confirm for them that the church is true? It just made us laugh. And so we would go home and we would make skits. Like we would reenact a lot of things after church because we just found it really funny. I don't know why. I think it just was.
It is. And it's funny. I love it. I find it entertaining, but I remember snickering like during Fast and Testimony meeting, especially because that it's coming a lot of times because it's always like the same people. You're like, we would take bets like who's going up first. Oh, it's sister so-and-so. She's always like gonna beat the crowd, right? She is walking, I feel like, before the leader sits down. Like there's always like that one person that is up and walking before. Do you know what I mean? Like so quickly I'm going to be the first. And she always says the same thing every freaking Sunday. And you're like, okay, and you're mouthing it right before she says it.
Yes. And they, a lot of the testimonies were repeated, like, and people would repeat each other too. And it was just like, what is this? Is this theater? So, and it is. It kind of is. So I think I pull from a lot of those memories a lot too. And just remembering the feeling of being in there and being like, what is going on? This is funny.
It is really funny. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. So you grew up in the church, right? And your parents, were they married in the temple?
Yes, yeah. So I was born and raised in Southern California in a very devout Mormon family. My ancestry actually goes back to the pioneers too. So Mormonism is quite literally in my DNA. My dad was born and raised in it. My mom was actually a convert, and she is from Spain and joined when she was 19. And my dad actually served his mission in Spain, and that's how they met. So they got married, sealed in the temple, had 8 kids.
Wait, how does that go? How does a person meet their spouse on their mission? Because it does seem to be a normal thing. Like a lot of my friends, they would go back to their mission and then marry somebody from their mission. Did they ever share that story, how that worked?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird, like the timeline is kind of confusing. I think she was in his ward that he was serving in the town that she lived in. Um, they met, they kind of, there were feelings there, but then he had to go off to other parts of Spain for the rest of his mission, but they kept in contact. Um, and then I don't know if the plan had already been set that she was going to move to the States, because she moved to the States before he was off his mission. Um, so yeah, I think they were low key dating while he was on his mission, but
Yes,
but
it
he was like
seems like
moving
that
around,
normal.
writing letters to each other. Yeah, but yeah, it is very common. I know so many people that have found their spouse on their mission, which is maybe kind of allowed now. I am hearing that they're changing some things, but it definitely was not allowed then. So I don't know.
No, it was not allowed then.
Right?
And also, like, okay, so they would have had to have had email, because I would assume that cell phones were not even a thing then, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
then also
yeah.
email wouldn't have even been a thing.
I don't think they had email. I think they wrote letters. I think they
Yeah,
wrote
I'm
letters. Very
almost
romantic.
positive. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I know I'm aging myself, but I was in high school when like email was invented.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I feel like your dad is a little bit older than me.
Yeah, I think he's 60 something.
Oh, well, yeah. So he's a lot older than me. So he
Yeah.
for sure did not have, like,
No, it was
they did not
letters.
have email. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have cell phones. Like,
Mm-mm.
I don't even think they had like the cell phones that are in a car, like the
No.
block things in a car.
Oh my gosh, I vaguely remember that. But yeah, no, I think it was strictly writing letters to each other, which is even crazier when you think about it. Like you barely know each other, and then, that's how you keep in contact. That's
By the way, your dad looks amazing. I would not have guessed that he was 60 now that he's making all these grand debuts on your channel.
I know.
Amazing.
That word of wisdom will keep you young.
It will. It will. Let me tell
He
you.
might, yeah, he might start aging now that he's dipping his toes into coffee and tea and alcohol. He'll never have his own drink. Like he will only ever take sips. But yeah, he's playing with it.
Well, give him some time. Give him some time.
Yeah, well, you never say never. Never say never. For him at this point, it's more like a health thing.
Well, I think that's what the word of wisdom initially is supposed to be, right? Kind of like a health guideline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Initially. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so they got married. They met on their mission, on
Yes.
his mission.
Mhm.
They get married. She moves from Spain, right? Did she speak very much English?
It was through a agency that was looking for nannies, and she found a family that she could serve in Los Angeles, where my dad was from. And so she went ahead of him, was working there. Yeah, didn't speak very much English, so she was just kind of nannying.
Wait, so she went to America before he even finished his mission?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course she did. And so then how long had she been a member? Like how old was she at this time? Because
Yeah.
if she joined at 19, how fresh is she in the Mormon church?
Yeah, so she joined at 19. She actually served a mission as well, like right away. So I think she might have been a member maybe 2 or 3 years at the
Where?
point.
Where did she serve a mission?
In Spain, locally.
Locally. You could
Yeah.
do that then.
I know. So yeah, maybe 3 years she had been a member, and then she moved to the States, waiting for my dad, I guess. And then when he got there, within 3 days, they got married. There's more detail there, but that's essentially what happened. They took a train to Vegas, got married, and then soon after got married in the temple. And I think my dad's family was like, "What the heck?" But all right, it's kind of
They got married in Vegas, like in one of those little like chapels. Those,
yes.
that's amazing. What an amazing story. And then so
Yeah.
they didn't have to wait, because normally it would be like if you got married civilly, you would have to wait an entire year to get sealed in the temple, but they didn't have to.
I don't think so. Not that I know, but I could be wrong. But from my
Because that's
dad's
a rule,
story,
right? You're familiar with that rule, right?
yes, yeah.
I don't
So
know if it's probably changed now,
It
but
probably there you can never keep track.
okay. So they get married and then they live in California.
Hmm. Yes. They started having, I think my mom was pregnant within like 6 months. Um, and they had 8 kids. Um,
Did your
and
mom ever work or was her primary
yeah,
responsibility in the home?
yeah. So she actually was let go from her nanny job when my dad came around. I don't know why, but they like didn't like that my dad was around. So they struggled quite a bit. I know they worked, both of them worked like at fast food jobs at the very start, and then eventually my dad got into insurance, like as an insurance agent, and then eventually he made enough money to where my mom didn't have to work, and so I think by the time their first daughter, my sister, was maybe a year old, I don't think she had to work again. So yeah, she didn't work for the majority of our lives growing up.
Um, and then what birth order are you?
I am smack dab in the middle. I'm the fifth child. So yeah, they had 8 kids together, but later on we'll find out that there's 11 of us total. My dad remarried. My stepmom had 2 of her own kids, and then they had a child together. So there's 11 total. But I am still in the middle. I'm the fifth.
Okay. So you've got two parents that are both returned missionaries raising 8 kids. How old were you when they got divorced?
Oof. I was 8 years old. And yeah, and that was probably my breaking point with the church. Like full on internal deconstruction of a lot of things at such a young age. But yeah, something in me just fully stopped believing. And I didn't really have the language for it at the time. But looking back, it was definitely the start of a lot of cognitive dissonance because when you're that young and something like so important like eternal family and marriage kind of doesn't make sense anymore, um, and then you still go for another 10 years, which was the case for me. It's very confusing, but yeah, yeah, they got divorced when I was 8, um, and of course there was an overlap with my mom's new man and my dad. And so there was also like a breaking of the covenant. Her temple ceiling was taken away. My dad was kind of freaking out and panicking, and so I remember, and we were all like well informed of everything going on. Like they were very honest, maybe too honest. But my dad was freaking out, and he's like, "What does this mean for our family and our family's like eternity together? Like, what does
So
this mean for the ceiling?"
how did she get her temple ceiling taken away? Was she excommunicated then?
No, uh, I don't know the specifics. I just know that because of the infidelity on her part, that her temple recommend was taken away. Because she would go like every weekend. My mom's like a fanatic about the temple. So she would go every weekend. And so when she couldn't go, it's because yeah, they took the temple recommend away.
Okay, so yes, so she had her temple recommend taken away, but she was still sealed to your dad. Even
Yes.
if they get divorced, the sealing still stands.
Yes, but my mom wanted to break her ceiling to my dad was the thing because like I said there's overlap.
She was able to get that granted.
Yes, it took some time. Um, it took some time, but I remember my dad, him and our bishop wrote to the first presidency beforehand and was asking like, what does this mean? Like trying to get information about, you know, breaking the covenant, the temple ceiling. Like if she were to break it, what does that mean for the family? Because the bishop didn't know. And so they hear back from the first presidency from Dallin H. Oaks himself. And he got a response from him saying that my mom had the agency to make her choices in this life, but she wouldn't be able to choose the eternal consequences that because she had broken the covenant. my dad would still be sealed to us as kids, but she wouldn't be. And so my dad was hoping, he was like, okay, well, maybe if she knows this, like, she won't leave, which a whole nother thing. Um, she still did. And then, like, that's the information that we knew of, is that, like, we weren't going to be with our mom in the afterlife, which was,
Yeah. I mean, how was that at like 8 years old? How were you even able to process that?
I think
Was
that's where
that,
the
was
problem
that
is.
your like kind of like your shelf breaking?
Yes, because at the same time, I'm going to primary still, and we're learning and singing the song families can be together forever, but like, I literally am learning that's not true for me right now because my mom broke her covenants and their ceiling is broken. And it's like, it was such a tumultuous time, and I was trying to make sense of something that even the adults around me couldn't even clearly explain. So I low key, like, and this happened through a lot of situations with the church, I dissociated a lot. But I also felt a lot of guilt because I was 8 years old. I had just been baptized that year. So in my head, I genuinely thought I had done something wrong. And that, because I remember learning, like, okay, you're, responsible for your sins now. And when you sin, like, the spirit leaves you, your blessings can get taken away. And because I had just been baptized and learned all of that, I was like, oh my God, did I do something to cause this? Like, is God taking our blessings away from our family? Because, like, did I forget to sin? Or, sorry, did I forget to repent for something? Like, did I cause the spirit to leave our family? So it was a lot. Like, it was a lot of anxiety, and even like scrupulosity is a term I've come to know very well now, that I was dealing with. And there's a lot of anger towards my mom too, because the narrative, obviously at the time, not the narrative, but the story was that, she broke our family and she, um, because of her, we're not going to be together. And so I had a lot of anger too. And and at this time too, like, our community within the church, some people responded, very kindly. Others were treating us like, we had the plague. Like, divorce was contagious. I remember one of my best friends, we were 8 years old. She came up to me and said, hey, like, I'm not allowed to come over anymore because my mom said, your parents are getting divorced, and divorce drives the spirit away. So there's no spirit in your home. And I was like, what? Like, so just all of these things all at once happening. And I'm 8 years old and I'm trying to, like, learn the ABCs or whatever the hell. Like, just so much going on. It was so painful. Um, yeah, but I don't know how I got
I
through
can't
that.
imagine how hard that was for you at 8 years old, having to not just realize that your family is not going to be together forever in heaven, and then also losing friendships that they can't, like, were you also not allowed to go to her house?
I was allowed to go to her house, but because I had, that was said to me, everything just changed. You know, I I felt like the weird kid, and our whole family did. Like, my siblings would say the same thing. We felt like the odd ones out, like the broken family, like the weird kids. Um, yeah, it was not a good time. It was not a good time of life.
So what did you stop believing in? Was it mostly the temple, or that process, and then it just kind of started snowballing, or how did that work?
I think it was definitely a snowball, because then I started questioning, like, I think it began with the entire temple logic. Like, even beyond divorce, the logic didn't really hold up, because I would ask questions to my dad, or people in the church, like, okay, I might not be with my mom, but okay, well then, don't I have to get married too? Grow up, get married, be sealed, for the whole family to actually be together? And if I don't, I'm also not going to be with my dad. And so it 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 forced me to question even deeper. Um, and come to find out, this promise is actually very fragile, even though it's presented as kind of absolute, as before. Um, so yeah, I think it just snowballed, and I think it instilled in me a questioning of things I was being taught. Hence why I make a lot of skits where I'm questioning the teacher. I'm like, wait, this doesn't make sense. Can you explain that to me? And even just like reading the Book of Mormon too, we're taught that God is this, loving being and everything's about love. But then I remember this story, I think it's in Nephi, where Nephi is commanded by God to go off Laban's head.
Yes, I know. I told that story to my youngest because we never took our youngest to church. And I told that story to her and asked her, just like, I was like, these are true people. Like, these are real people. These are real characters. And I read the story to her and I was like, do you think that's true? And she's like, absolutely not. She's like, that is ridiculous. That's wild.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And I remember hearing that story, or there's another story too, where I think it was like a group of people that wouldn't repent about something in the Book of Mormon, and God sent fires and floods and destroyed like countless cities of people with men, women, and children. And so that's part of the cognitive dissonance for me too that I had growing up, is like, okay, God's loving, but God is also very violent and sort of evil in these stories. And it instills fear in you too. Like, okay, if I don't repent, God's gonna smite me down or take away my family blessings. Like, so these ideas contradict each other, that God is love. God can't be love if God is that violent in my head as a child. So I think over the years, I became very confused, had a lot of anger from those events from 8 years old. And I think I would go through phases where I would question things. They never made sense to me. I think no one could make it make sense to me. Just, I don't know if it's just my neurodivergent brain or what, but it just was like, this doesn't make sense. Um, and sometimes I would go into periods where I was like, I give up, I kind of dissociate, like this is not making any sense, but like everyone around me fully believes this is true. And so because you're so young and you don't have a choice, like my parents didn't give me a choice whether to go to church or not, you kind of have to learn to survive. And for me, a lot of the time was dissociating.
So
Yeah.
you had to continue going to church even though you didn't believe in it.
Oh yeah.
And so what do you mean you had to disassociate? How did you do that?
I just remember sitting in a lot of classes in young women's, or the combined classes, or um, even in sacrament, as they were talking through stories through the Book of Mormon, and even the Bible. um, I would literally, I would just start thinking about other things, right? Like, part of it sometimes is boredom, but part of it is because like, this doesn't make sense to me. I can't pay attention. And I would just tune out. Like, I couldn't hear anything. I was kind of in my own little world, and I would just daydream a lot at church. Because like I don't know, I kind of created my own little world in my head, and I would just be in there instead. And it's actually a coping mechanism I've learned, and one that I'm trying to now dispel from myself, because when hard things happen in my life now, I do that where I'm like, okay, I check out. I kind of check out, because my brain has learned that response of, like, when there's difficulty or pain or things don't make sense, my brain kind of shuts down. And so that's kind of what I mean when I say I would start to dissociate, because things didn't make sense and things were painful. And that's kind of just how I started to deal with it, which is not very healthy.
Yeah. Well, so then what happened in Young Women's, like in Mutual, when you went there, how were you able to disassociate there? I mean, because you're kind of forced to have to engage in these activities.
Yeah, I mean, when I was, you know, there's a level of conforming that you have to do, especially in the mindset that I was in. Like, you have to kind of play the game a little bit. So it kind of just depended on the activity. If it was a very, if it was something I like really disagreed with, like a lot of the gender roles or purity culture teachings, I already like very much disagreed with. Um, and so at those times, I would either dissociate, and I think what I would do is just get very quiet and just be to myself. Like I didn't, um, I tried my best not to participate, I guess, and keep to myself and be like, I kind of became a hermit in a lot of those times. But then there are times where, like, being in that state is painful in itself. Like you're just kind of a shell, so you have to shift and sort of perform, and play the part as like someone who wants to be there to survive. That you like, I would shift between, like, I had different versions of myself that I would kind of tap into. I'm like, all right, let's be like Mormon girl and like play with my friends and participate, because that's how I can get through this class or this activity.
Is it almost like you were living like a double life?
Absolutely. And that got more and more the case as I got older. Uh
Yeah.
yeah, when I got into high school, it was, oh, I was like three completely different people, and my family didn't know who I was at all. Like who I was like in high school, like who I was when I went to school versus who I was at home or at church, or even at two separate parents' houses, because they also were very different.
You were like a chameleon. You were just adapting to survive in whatever environment that you were in. What types of purity culture and gender roles did you have a hard time accepting?
I don't know if I could even just pick one,
So
because
all of them?
it's all of them, and for me it's different because they land a lot different. Because I was sexually abused at a young age, so I carried a lot of shame, and it was heavily reinforced by purity culture, in my experience. Like I remember being young women's class, and one of the teachers doing the gum analogy, right, where uh, you have a piece of gum, it's intact, and like they explained out how it's preserved and untouched and perfect and pure, and then she'd chew it up in her mouth. She would take it out of her mouth and say, the piece of gum can never be restored to its original condition, and this is what happens when you participate in anything sexual before marriage. So there were things like that all the time, and I developed really young too. Like my body, like I had breasts by the time I was like 12. So there was also that part of it too, where I was heavily policed because I was rebellious, because I dissociated, because I was,
You have huge boobs. Like
yeah. I
I
actually got
saw
a
you
reduction.
in, you did?
I got a reduction like 2 years ago. Yeah, these are, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
they were even
Yeah,
bigger.
because you have pictures on your page of you in Europe in a swimsuit, and
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's like your sisters that
Yes.
you're with because they all have big,
Yeah.
beautiful boobs.
Yes. Yes. We're very blessed from our grandma. But yes, and so I developed very young, and they were large from a very young age, which, like, just in my young women's circle, like I was the first one to develop. And so I think because of my behavior, um, and because of my more rebellious nature, because I had that anger and I had that confusion, and I would ask questions, like I was more focused on, I was very heavily monitored and policed, like about pulling up my top or being given a t-shirt to wear over my bathing suit at youth activities, and being
Even
told,
though, were you wearing a one piece
yes.
and you still had to wear a t-shirt over the one piece
Yeah.
because you were more developed?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. I
It
mean,
would
just
be
the
like,
shame in that alone
yeah.
is a lot.
There's so many layers to it. There's so many layers. Like that could be one instance that, and you can carry that shame for the rest of your life and have like take the meaning from that. But there's so many layers, and I was constantly told, and generally just like as a teaching, but also individually, like I'm a temptation or a stumbling block to the men if my shoulders, knees, or cleavage sticks out. And there's just so much shaming that happens, and it's reinforced by church leaders too. Like that's the craziest part. Um, is like I've shared about these experiences online, and I get comments that I just had a bad leader, and that's not what the church teaches, and that's just gaslighting because there are talks by church leaders reinforcing these ideas. Like I think it was Gordon B. Hinckley had a general conference talk, and he said like modesty is dress and manner, or modesty. Shoot, what was it? Modesty in dress and manner will assist in protecting against temptation. So it's like that's straight from the horse's mouth. Like these are church leaders saying these things, and devout members take general conference talks to heart, and that's like what they base their teachings off of.
Well, also I was because I joined the church when I was 19 as well. And President Hinckley was the prophet when I joined the church. And so I was living all of this in like real time. I think that it came out with the single piercings were before, just not, a couple years before, but he came up with that. He came up with the modesty rules, the no tattoos, not wearing a cross. That was
Oh my
all
gosh.
that was all Gordon B. Hinckley. And I was taught that anything that a prophet says is considered doctrine.
Right.
And also like every single time that there is a general conference, you're supposed to take that ensign and keep it with you, because now you have all of the current teachings, because that's basically the entire foundation of this church, is that it's the latter days, right? And so then you have all of the teachings from the church leaders, and those are considered doctrine of the church and standards you're supposed to follow.
Yes, exactly. And that is, it's the craziest thing with, I think it's the younger generation on TikTok and Instagram in the comments, is that they're like, this was never taught by the church. Oh, you can't take what the prophet says as doctrine. That's not doctrine. That's just policy, or that was just a talk. Like you can't take. It's like what? What is this? Like what is happening? That's not what we were raised like. And like you said, like what a prophet says is doctrine, and that's how the church is based. That's the foundations of all of the teachings.
I know, and you're right. It is gaslighting all the way, because I cannot tell you, like, and I see it on your reels as well, is that all of these apologists, as I like to call them, they all are saying like that was never a rule. That's not doctrine. And I'm like, but President Hinckley told us we were not allowed to wear a cross. When I was baptized, I, my non-member parents, they gave me a cross to wear, because they have no idea, right? Like what anything about Mormons at all, but they were just trying to be supportive. And I was told by my bishop I was not allowed to wear that cross. And that's not just because I had a bad bishop. That was everywhere. I served in young women's leadership. I served in the Relief Society presidency, primary presidency. There is no way in this world that I would ever be allowed to wear a cross in leadership also. Like that would not be allowed. And I have been to church wards in California, Utah, Idaho, and also everywhere that I travel. We were the church people that went to church on vacation. So like we were in Hawaii and I would go to those wards, like, so it's not like it's just one bishop. It's like, no, like these things are not, like women do not wear pants to church. That is not a thing. Okay. Like I've never, ever seen that ever. And I have been to a lot of wards. That is not a thing. Please stop trying to rewrite history and gaslight our truth.
Yes. And that's exactly what it is. And I don't think that because it's a lot of younger members, I don't think that they even know that they're doing that. I think that they are truly
No, I have older members that are doing it too, where they're like, I've been
Really?
a member for 40 some years and that has never been the case. And because I would say that I'm saying, because you can't really tell how old these people are. And I would ask like, well, maybe that was like, you're too young to understand that. And he's
Yeah.
like, oh, is 50 too young? And I was like, well, no, you're a lot older than me. So definitely not.
Yeah.
Um, but you have to, there's no way that you don't remember President Hinckley putting even like tattoos where they're like, tattoos were always okay. They were never forbidden. I was like, what?
No way. Yeah, I'm the same as you. Like I grew up coming to Utah and going to my grandma's ward, or when my parents got divorced, my mom would go to her own ward, and I experienced multiple different kinds of wards, and they were all like that, where they followed the strict rules. And I think I think it's either that it's the younger members that aren't being taught the way we were. There's a lot of softening of the messaging that's happening, or it's these other. I feel like it's these other members that they weren't raised like with devout leaders. Maybe I don't know what else it could be, because we're not lying. Like these all happen. Like I'm having the same experience that you had. So
Yeah, but it doesn't matter if you don't have devout leaders because I wasn't a devout leader. I was always told, hey, you need to go have that girl put a t-shirt on, right? Like they were trying to make me be that leader. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. I'm just glad that that girl is here on a Wednesday because she could be anywhere else. If you want her to put a t-shirt on, you can do it, but I'm not doing it. And I remember the bishop calling me in and being like, you need to enforce these rules. And I was like, I'm not doing that. There's 3 of us. Okay. There's 3 of us leaders in Young Women's. I'm not doing it. Have someone else do it. Cause I don't believe in it.
hell yeah.
And I'm like, but the other leaders, like, so then the president would go ahead and, enforce that. And then not long after that, I would be released and put into the primary. But it was only a matter of a new bishop until I was always put back into the Young Women's, but they always tried to make me enforce all of those rules because we had t-shirts that we kept in the closet of every size to put over
Yeah. Oh
these
my
girls, including non-members that would show up. And my thing is too, is that I'm like, okay, these, especially the members that are coming to these activities, if they left the house wearing that, that's their mom's responsibility. That's their dad's responsibility. That's not us as leaders to install that. If she wore a 2-piece, that's on her parents. Like that's not, who am I to tell them what they should wear? And also like, I mean, I was wearing a 2-piece.
Yeah. My parents would send me with the one piece that I had, and I would be given a t-shirt. And I think about that, and I'm like, why is there that difference? And I wondered if it was because, in my case, like one of our young women leaders, her son was there. And so I think in her mind, maybe she was protecting him from my body.
Well, yes, because you remember that we are taught that our bodies, if we are not modest and we don't cover up, or even though you're wearing a 1-piece, your boobs are very big. So you're probably going to have cleavage in a t-shirt, like honestly, really. And so you're taught that your body is pornography for these men.
Yes, literally, literally.
Well,
Yeah.
and then can we go back to the SA? So
Yeah.
I feel like, and I don't know if you watch The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives.
You.
Okay. Do you remember the reunion where almost, I want to say it was like all but 2 or 3 people had been SA'd?
Yeah.
And that was the first time where my eyes opened up to realizing like there is so much sexual abuse that happens within the church.
A lot.
More than I think anyone realizes. And I just wonder if a lot of it has to do with the purity culture.
Yes, definitely. I mean, you're taught that something's a temptation, something's to be feared. It's almost like it does the opposite effect. And I think, SA in the church is generational as well. It's with children, it often happens within the family. And that's generational. And I think if you look at the origins of the church, polygamy and, child brides and how that all unfolded, it makes sense that this is because a lot of these families too have pioneer ancestry, and that gets passed down generation to generation. And, a common thing in the Mormon church is to sweep things under the rug. There was, child abuse or sexual abuse in my dad's family too growing up. And the way that a lot of the family wanted to handle it was not to talk about it, not to bring it up. They don't want to expose it. They just sweep it under the rug. And that is also a generational pattern. And it's the microcosm to the macrocosm of the Mormon church, actually. But it really, it's not addressed though. There's purity culture, and they teach you what to fear and, how to protect the men and how to cover yourself up. But they don't teach the other side of, or any education about sexuality. And I think that's a huge problem in the church, is the way that we're raised to understand sexuality in general. And then when you have something like sexual trauma happen, especially inside a high control religious environment that talks a lot about purity and worthiness and avoiding situations, it can really blur how you interpret when that happens to you, like what that means, because they just straight up don't address it as a factor. The only time I've ever heard abuse addressed was from the talk, General Conference talk, I think it's Richard G. Scott, where he said, and I quote, "The Lord may prompt a victim to recognize a degree of responsibility for the abuse." That's Mormonism. And so I think that goes hand in hand in like with teaching young girls that their bodies are a temptation to men, so they should cover them up. And then as a kid, like for me, I didn't have the ability to understand what had happened to me clearly. So a lot of that confusion can turn inward as self-blame and feeling like something was wrong with me or I did something to cause that. And so just the combination of that all of those teachings is a really bad recipe.
Were you ever, did you ever feel safe enough to be able to tell anybody?
I didn't even realize what had happened until I started being taught in Young Women's that like the gum analogy. I didn't even realize like what had happened. And, I do remember like one of my first worthiness interviews was to do baptisms for the dead.
I remember I saw this reel. Yes.
Yes. That was the first time I had been asked, because, so you turn 12 and you're expected to go do this temple ritual for baptism for the dead, but you have to do the interview first.
And the interview is always with your bishop, some middle-aged man that has absolutely zero training. Like, I think you were like, it can be a plumber, it could be a dentist, it could be anybody that you are in this closed, private, soundproof room being asked all of these questions.
And even just the name of it. I got a comment the other day that said, it's not called a worthiness interview, it's called a temple recommend interview. I was like, no, it was called a worthiness interview when it happened with me. It's a worthiness interview to obtain a limited temple recommend that determines if you're worthy enough to enter the temple building, which is insane in itself to measure a worthiness of any human being, let alone a child.
And then, and if you get that taken away, to then also have that feeling where you're like, okay, well, I'm not worthy. Like that itself is a lot of trauma as well.
So that's how it started for me. So in the interview, they asked various questions, right? Like, do you believe the church is true? If Joseph Smith was a true prophet? If you believe in Jesus, like he died for your sins? But then they ask, word of wisdom questions. Do you drink coffee, tea, alcohol, all that jazz?
Which at 12 years old, right?
And then the grand finale, they ask if you obey the law of chastity. And I didn't know what that word meant. Like I had been taught, modesty. But I don't think that that word had been used yet.
Because you're also coming right out of primary, and primary, none of those lessons talk about chastity. Those are all in the young women's. And so you probably hadn't gotten that lesson yet.
I don't think I had, because I was like, what's that? I don't know what the heck that is. So he proceeded to ask specifically if I've ever touched myself, if someone else, or if I've touched someone else, if I've ever thought about touching myself or others, if I had sexual thoughts or dirty thoughts, if I keep those clean. Like, it was like questions like that.
He asked you if someone had touched you.
No, if I had touched myself or touched anyone else. He didn't ask if someone had touched me.
Because if he did ask that, do you feel like your 12-year-old self would have said yes
No.
or not?
No, because I remember just freezing in place, and the thought of what had happened with my sexual abuse came to my mind. But I just remember freezing in place and feeling like I was in trouble, like he knew or something. And also, because of the abuse, I didn't really know how to answer that. Like, I think he didn't ask the right combination of question, but I was afraid of getting in trouble if I didn't get this recommend. Like, that's just how my brain was working. Like, I just said, yes, I obey, you know? But then, of course, like, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, I'm not worthy. Like, that happened to me, and it was hard. Like, it was a hard time to be inside my brain.
Did he ask you if you masturbated also?
Yeah, and I just said no. I think he used chastity first, and then he used the word masturbate, and I was kind of like, and then he just asked, like, have you touched yourself in your private areas? Like, have you touched anyone else in their private areas? So, yeah, he had to get, like, he had to find, like, what words do you know to understand what I'm asking you? And it just, even that should tell you, like, you shouldn't be asking a question like that to a child.
It's almost like a breeding ground for if, I mean, I'm not saying every single bishop is a creep, but I also think like even if somebody maybe had never thought of doing that, like if you're doing that and then eventually like you start having those thoughts while you're asking these children these questions, I feel like that is why it's a breeding ground for so much sexual abuse.
It absolutely is. And that wasn't my first, or that wasn't my last worthiness interview either. Like I said, I became very rebellious, even hypersexual, you might describe me as, because of the abuse. And so I was in the bishop's office a lot. And yeah, that wasn't my last interview. And I think it got a little bit worse because, like, I had been caught sexting with my, like, boyfriend in middle school. And so I got sent to the bishop's office, and it was that one I blacked out. Like, I dissociated because that was so humiliating. I got my sacrament taken away. But I do remember him asking me what I was saying in the messages, because he had to know, like, how bad the severity of my sin, and how bad my punishment needed to be, and where I needed to go with the repentance process. And it was mortifying to be asked because it was a different bishop at this point. So whole new old man asking me these sexual questions and wanting the details of it. But, like, that one, I definitely dissociated a lot. And I just remember my sacrament being taken away and kind of being looked at, because, we pass it around and you're like, and it's just so embarrassing. And everyone knows that you did something bad. And even, like, my leaders were always informed anytime I got in trouble, and had to see the bishop. So, like, it's like almost everyone knew. And even down from, like, the leaders, like, it trickled down to the kids too, because, like, I remember my friend in class telling me that her mom and dad were talking about me at the dinner table about I think it was either I did a lot of shit. So I'm thinking, was it the sexting thing or was it something else? But yeah, the boundaries too within the church are were not existent for me, at least. Like everyone always knew what I was like in trouble for, and it was just humiliating. It was a humiliating time of my life.
Well, the boundaries as far as like confidentiality, right? Like,
There was no confidentiality. Everyone knew everyone's business.
well, so I served under a bishop that was like that. I mean, he basically told all of the information, not just about like the young women. I would learn about the young men. I would learn about people's marriages. Like, I remember thinking like, I should not be privy to any of this knowledge at all. Like, this is also, it made me distrust him. Like, I'm never coming to you for anything ever. But also, like, I think about, I feel like with a lot of these worthiness interviews, is that it's also creating liars because so many people lie and we're forced to lie just to protect our image. And I mean, right? Like, not just your image, but that you're trying to get yourself out of trouble. So like, even like my husband, he had to lie a lot because he, just had a little fun, and he had to lie in order to, you know, be able to do all of those milestones that you're supposed to do just to get yourself out of trouble, or keep yourself out of trouble with your parents.
Absolutely. And I became a very good liar because of that, actually. Yeah, because the uh, image is so important, but also you don't want to disappoint your parents or the leaders, and you distort the image of your family. It's all so intertwined and connected. And as kids too, like from my perspective, when I was in there, like I could feel that. I could feel that that image was very important. Um, so there's a lot of layers there, but yeah, creates very good liars. That's such a good point. I don't think when we talk about Mormonism being a high control, high demand, and in like involvement in religion, we don't even talk about that. But that's a huge point of how involved everyone gets in your business.
That is something that's really hard to shake. Like, when you have created these double lives for yourself and you are constantly having to lie, and it could be lying about anything, like lying about, even as a parent, lying about your kids and what they're doing, because your measurement of how righteous you are
Yeah.
is also tied to your children. And so that's why your parents, I'm sure, were very worried about where you were falling on your righteousness level,
Mm.
because that affects them. And
Yes.
it's just a domino effect,
Yes.
creating liars all the way
Yes.
around for everybody.
After many times of me getting in trouble and going to the bishop's office, my dad looked at me and he said, "Why can't you just be like so and so?" And he said one of my friends' names, who was another Mormon girl. Oh, that was like a stake to the heart when he said that. And I was like maybe 16 years old, and I was at like the height of, just being a teenager and trying to figure out who I was and all of the things I had been through and how it had affected me. But like the funniest part was because I knew my friend, like she wasn't even like your Molly Mormon. Like she was doing the bad shit and she
No,
was
yeah.
sneaking out. She just hid it. Like she just um wasn't as loud about it as I was, or getting caught like I was, but and it was the irony, but it was just the image in the church of like she had this image because I don't even know. It was like you don't even know the half of it. She's not all perfect, but I wasn't gonna tell on her. I wasn't gonna tell on her.
Yeah, no, I know. I experienced the same shit, especially like with my son. He got his temple recommend taken away for playing basketball on Sunday.
No
And
way.
yeah.
Oh,
And the whole time I'm sitting there, because I was in the young women, so I knew everything about the youth, including the young men. And we lived in a pretty small town, and I knew that the one of the boys, he was having sex with his girlfriend. I knew that, and he's still passing the sacrament. The bishop doesn't know that because he's really, really like everybody. He was like whatever, like the president of, like whatever their group is for. I don't really know much about young men's because I didn't never serve there, but he was like the president of whatever their quorum is, and I'm like, but he's literally having sex with his girlfriend. My son has not done that. And I know because I would know because trust me, people would come and tell me to get him in trouble. And he hadn't had a girlfriend anyways. And I was like, this is bullshit that he's getting that taken away. Also, there was another girl that she's having anal sex with her boyfriend and she can go to the temple. We're all going to go to the temple and baptize all these dead people. And all of these kids are all a bunch of sinners and lying about it. But because my son wasn't able to hide that he was playing basketball on Sunday because of social media, right? You get tagged in a team championship photo.
Yeah.
Then like the whole thing is bullshit. And I'm like, okay, just because we are not as good at hiding things as other people, because even the bishop, I remember him being like, well, you have to understand, like, you have to like do it, but hide it. And I'm like, how am I supposed to hide it? I'm going to get tagged in a championship photo. I didn't post it. I wasn't even there at the game because I was teaching at church.
That's insane that a bit like the bishop told you to just hide it.
Really?
And of all the things that kids could be doing, like playing basketball on a Sunday, really? But that's how it was growing up for me too. I mean, no swimming on Sundays, no watching TV, all that sort of stuff. But it's but people do it all the time and they just hide it. It's like, what's the point? Why are we all doing this? Let's just be authentic,
But is it really? Like, honestly, like, is it really shocking?
No.
Not at all, right? Like yeah, no. Because I'm sure you've had similar experiences or seen similar things happen. But no, there's cover-ups that happen all the time, especially when you're in leadership. My husband was in the bishopric. I mean, there's so much that the bishopric, the stake presidency will cover up because they don't want it to get out. They don't want anybody within the community to look at these Mormons like, oh, we have any sort of flaws.
That's heavily reinforced by the church members, and for me, my mom was that way, is like protecting the image not only of the family but like of the church, and wanting to present as what the church wants you to present as, and a lot of the time it's so that you can attract more members. So you don't want the Mormon kids to be looked at as like they're doing what they're not supposed to do. Like, you want it to look like they're obedient and they're good kids. And so you can, I don't know, it's like that's a huge theme in the Mormon church is protecting that image so that you can attract members to come. Like, I always thought that was really, really interesting, and it would really piss me off, honestly, because my mom, she'd be one way at church and then she'd be a totally different person at home, or she'd be one way with like strangers, and then she'd always invite them to church, but it was just like, just be yourself, like be who you are,
which I'm sure was hard because you couldn't even be yourself.
No.
Also, how confusing was that to even figure out who it was that Annie was? Like, how did you finally get to the point where you were like, okay, I'm out? Like, did you have to graduate from high school to finally be done?
Yes. Well, I wasn't allowed to stop going until I turned 18. For some reason, that was like once you turn 18, then you're, responsible for yourself and you don't have to go. And my dad had moved out of California at that point when I graduated. So I was living at my mom's house, and she is the most devout Mormon, probably in the world.
So had she married that boyfriend?
Yes, she did. Within 6 months, she married him.
And are they still married?
Nope. No. He was African American, and he found out about the priesthood ban for Black members.
he Mormon when they started dating? Or she?
No, 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 he was from Georgia, and they had met online, and she didn't even tell him that she had kids. She had 8 of them. She flew him out, and they started. I mean, they were dating before my parents were even officially divorced, and so yeah, they started dating, um, and it was like an ultimatum for him to have to be Mormon to be with her. So he did, and they were married, I think, for to join the church. Yeah, he had to join the church for her to be in a relationship with him, and so he said yeah. Um, and yeah, they were married for 10 or 12 years, and then um, I know there was other problems that they had in the relationship that contributed to the divorce, but he started questioning the church because he found out about the priesthood ban.
Because it is doctrine. I know that a lot of people try to say, "Oh, that wasn't doctrine." I was like, this was doctrine. These were all like explicit rules. And by the way, it was only targeted towards Black people, not any other race. So it wasn't just like dark skinned people, like because people are like, "Oh, it's dark skin," and I'm like, No,
Even so, it's not doesn't make it better. It's like
like yeah, no, it doesn't make it better, but they think it does.
I know, I know the mental gymnastics is interesting. I think he had started questioning a few years before and found out a few years before they divorced. And I don't think that was even the main reason they divorced, but I think it was his catalyst for starting to question the church. So it happened a few years um, before. So, but I mean, it makes sense. That's not really talked about. And you have to actually, like, yourself go read it in the Book of Mormon and look for it. And then, of course, they have their narratives that they try to spin about, why they had that or whatever. But I think, especially if you're African American, that's going to hit way different. Um, Even now as an adult, like I had heard about it when I was a child, but, um, there's, as an adult now, I'm like, that is some crazy shit.
Well, and then like I obviously went down the rabbit hole because I started like you don't question any of these things when you're in the church, but then you leave the church and you automatically like want to know more and you start doubting your doubts or whatever you want to call it. But I remember like learning about all of the things that were done to these Black people and why they finally decided to change was basically because um like so basically these other teams would refuse to play BYU. That's really why they
I've
conformed.
heard this, yes.
So all of these teams, they basically were like, we're not playing BYU. They're racist. And so basically BYU was saying that Black people were good enough to help them win championships and be on a field, right? And score touchdowns for them, but they weren't good enough to be able to hold the priesthood, enter the temple because they were not worthy. And they also, did you know that the church spent so much money opposing the civil rights movement? And then also told the students at BYU that if they participated in any march or anything that was opposing the segregation, that they would be expelled from school. So they were being threatened, members were being threatened, like all of these things. And this, like, it's just wild to me how it's like you just can't just forget that stuff. You can't just shove it under the rug and pretend that it never happened. And then there's never been an apology. And even like they had temple workers that were Black women, like that sounds a lot like slavery to me. Like you can go in and you can work in the temple as a volunteer. You're not getting paid. I mean, I understand everyone's volunteers within the church, but still it sounds a lot like slavery. So it's like you can go in and you can participate in helping all the other races in the temple do their temple ceremonies, and be sealed to their families. However, you do not get to partake in any of those same things individually because you're Black.
Yeah. And to think that this is the Church of Jesus Christ, like enforcing all of the, like when you really put it into perspective, that's how the church started, is because Joseph Smith had Jesus Christ's full gospel again. But then that's how the church behaved. It's like, really? That's not love. That's human. That's human men making those decisions based off of, cultural and societal happenings. So
did you know that he had like 2 rocks? That was like, did you know that's how Joseph Smith wrote the Book of Mormon? Did you know that?
I remember vaguely just the words Urim and Thummim.
Yes, that's what I remember. And I'm like,
that's all I remember.
Wait, was it just 2 rocks? Because I always envisioned it as it was like some sort of like a tool, almost like spyglasses.
Yes,
like where
that's
you could.
What I thought. That's what I thought. I didn't realize it was like
code with this instrument. I didn't realize it was 2 rocks into a hat, and he was looking in a hat.
I didn't realize it was that. I had just heard those words, and I thought, oh, it must be some magical device. I didn't know it was rocks. I actually got a DM from a former bishop, ex-Mormon now, when I started making skits, and he told me all about the rock in a hat. And I was like, what? What?
Okay, I'm so glad that I wasn't the only one, because I was like, man, I was failing learning about church. What? Like, also, most magicians do pull shit out of a hat, so it makes sense, right? Like,
yeah. Dude, that's crazy. That is so funny. Like, he really.
And then think about all the people that are like believing this. That is like, this man literally had 2 rocks in a hat, and he wrote the Book of Mormon just like a magician. Like.
Yeah.
Get out of a hat. Like, did rabbits also come out of there? Like, what happened? I need to know. When they say like the angel Moroni appeared, was it actually a rabbit out of a hat? I just want to know.
Yeah. No, I've heard some theories that people think he was maybe on psychedelics or drugs or something like that when he was making these things up.
I would understand that. And to be honest, I might go back to church if that was it. If they were like, yeah, that's what it was. I was like, okay, all right. Okay, I'll follow that.
Right? That's the thing too. If they were to be upfront and honest and take accountability for a lot of things and make changes, I think there's so much corruption in it at this point, especially after the funneling of money to shell companies, the sexual abuse case cover-ups, like that kind of stuff is like, it's irreversible for me. I think the leadership needs to be completely filtered out. I do think even if they were to take accountability, apologize, and make changes, it could be a really great organization. But I think Dallin H. Oaks said, or maybe it was Nelson, they don't apologize, right?
I think it was Oaks. He said, yeah, we do not apologize as a church.
They say, the prophet's not infallible, and sometimes they speak as men, and men can make mistakes, but they're not going to apologize for their mistakes. Like, how does that make sense? Why are they not held to the same standards of, repentance and accountability as other members are? Why are they held to a different standard?
Yeah, no, it's crazy because it just seems like things just change based upon whatever white man is sitting on the throne at the time, which is really, really hard to swallow. Like, because I remember being part of the hashtag I am Mormon, like the whole campaign, like I did that. We would have missionaries over, we would take a photo and we would post it and be like, hashtag I am Mormon. We'd have the missionaries come and help us decorate for Christmas, right? Like, and all of these things, I was part of that campaign. And now they're like, no, we are not referring to ourselves as Mormon because now we have a new white man telling us what to do. And I'm like, okay, well then, so was the other guy wrong? Like, I feel like I need answers, kind of like you were saying, like, I need answers to these questions. Nobody can answer Nobody can answer them. And we're just supposed to just be like, well, just believe it. Just understand, just have blind faith.
I know. I almost sometimes think like they change things, um, just to see if they will follow it. Like, like, just to see how much they can get us to do and follow. But
Well, they kind of did that with the, what was it? It was the children of gay couples. They were not able to be baptized until they were 18. And they also had to basically denounce their parents, and what they were doing was a sin, right? Before they could get baptized. And then I want to say it was only like 6 months or something, and they reversed it. And so they were kind of like, let's just see. And then they're like, oh, no, that was a mistake. Sorry, I'm going to take that back. And now we're going to but we're not going to say anything about it. We're just going to delete it.
it's horrible. It caused a lot of suicide.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about families being ripped apart, and the church is supposed to be family centered and claim to be so much about family, but that teared a lot of families apart because, like we're saying, you just follow what the church says, and so a lot of people did that, and it caused a lot of destruction. I remember. Did you live in California?
Yeah, for a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I don't remember what year it was, but when they were doing Prop 8 in California against gay marriage, do you remember that?
Yeah. The church spent a lot of money.
Yes. Yeah, maybe I was like 11 or 12, but I remember they had us children making the picket signs.
What?
And yeah, I remember making picket signs, and we went to the corner of the street across from the Target, and they had us kids, like the youth groups, holding the picket signs saying, say no to Prop 8.
Church leaders had you making signs
Yes.
and
Yes.
protesting Prop 8.
Yes. Yeah, it was a big movement. And we were asked to do that in our ward. I think that came down
I don't
from
imagine having, like, you're having minors do this, of all things. Like, you don't really have a choice. Like, that's insane.
talk about indoctrination too, and shaping people's worldviews of others. And I at the time, like, I had this friend since kindergarten, and very early on she came out as gay. And so I remember that teaching, like the teachings about the LGBTQ plus community, were very another cognitive dissonance in my brain, because you're being told, it's not a choice, or it's a choice that they're gay, that they want to tempt you into that lifestyle, and that's why they do it. That they should just, live their life alone and not give into that sin. And I remember being taught those things, but I have this friend that I've had since I was 5 years old who had no agenda, and it just didn't make sense. That's another thing that just did not make sense to me, and didn't feel very loving, didn't feel like something Jesus would do.
And you had to do it.
And I had to do it.
You didn't have a choice, right?
No, I had no choice. It was what we were doing that day.
But that's what I just don't understand. Because people are always like, oh no, it is a choice. You have your free agency. Like, do you feel like there's any free agency in the church?
All right, blamers, that's another shot of truth with no chaser. If you made it this far, I love you for it. If you're offended, it's probably because it hit home. Make sure you hit follow so you don't miss the next episode. Share this one with your friends, your ex, your therapist, whoever needs to hear it. And tag me at Blame It on Mel so I can see who's taking the blame with me. Until next time, keep it real, keep it raw, and if all else fails, just blame Mel.